Don't touch that dial. You're tuned in to the Dread Podcast Network.
Welcome to Development Hell. For every horror movie that hits V.O.D, countless others end up D.O.A. Development Hell is the podcast dedicated to unearthing these cursed horror productions. We're going to find out what went wrong, and then decide if these titles still stand a shot at the green light. I am your host, Josh Corngut. I am the managing editor of Dread Central. I am also a filmmaker in Toronto, Canada. This podcast is a proud member of the Dread Podcast Network. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Development Hell. We recently wrapped up our miniseries on unproduced George A. Romero unmade films, and that was such a blast and such a success that I knew I wanted to follow it up with a sequel series of sorts, and that's what we're doing today. We are covering a totally new master of horror. For the next 4 weeks, including today, we are headed into King's Domain with Stephen King, Unseen. On this 4-part limited audio series, we are unearthing canceled, lost, and troubled adaptations from this master of horror. Today, on our first episode, we're going to embark on a very long journey across the desert to unveil the past, the present, and the future of King's magnum opus work, The Dark Tower. Joining us today for this entire limited series of Stephen King Unseen is iconic podcaster and constant reader, Rachel Reeves. So you undoubtedly know Rachel from her time on legendary podcasts like The Losers Club, Halloweenies, The Pod and the Pendulum, The Girls on the Boys, and probably more. And you've definitely read her writing here on Dread Central. Rachel, can you introduce yourself to the Development Hell audience?
Thank you, Sai, so much for that incredible intro. Hi, hello, this is Rachel Reeves. I am indeed a chronic podcaster with so many projects, but one of them being Losers Club, of course, where we cover all sorts of Stephen King stuff. So very excited to dive into this here in this whole series and just explore the what ifs and the what happens. Outside of that, I write a lot up for Dread Central about film music. So if anybody is a fan of film scores and composers, I do a lot of interviews and have a column over there called Terror on the Turntable. If people are interested in that, you can find all sorts of film music stuff up on Dread Central.
Constant listeners of Development Hell are likely aware that I'm personally also obsessed with Stephen King. This is definitely not the first time that we're going to be tackling King on this podcast, but it's definitely going to be the most in-depth over the course of June. So I guess I'll start us off, even though this is kind of like a big question. I kind of want to know what you and I, like our personal relationships with King. Where did it begin? How did it start? Just some general King housekeeping. So Rachel, why don't we start with you?
So it's so funny how I came to Stephen King, and I love talking about King with people and like, oh, what was your first book? Because I didn't realize that my first book was, weird until I started talking to more people. So the first Stephen King book that I read was The Talisman. And see, you know, dear listeners, you cannot see, but Josh just made a very surprised face.
What? And you're still reading? You're still reading?
That's the thing. Okay. It's so weird because, my mom was a librarian and she retired from that, but was a librarian for years and years and years. And she was, growing up, she read a lot of fantasy stuff. So I think that's how I came across it, was just, I was being like my mom and reading a lot of like Anne McCaffrey, like dragon fantasy novels and stuff like that. And then, you see Stephen King. I was like, oh, I know that name. So I read The Talisman. And yes, surprisingly, I kept going.
And you're still here.
How old were you? I feel like I was in middle school at that point. So I was trying to read like adult books. So for some reason, I probably was like lying to myself and being like, this is the best book I've ever read. Like, this is amazing. There's twinners and werewolves and I love it. Actually, I don't know. maybe I wasn't lying to myself. That sounds pretty cool, even to this day.
I have a personal
Sure.
question to ask. I'm so sorry. Were you a gifty? Were you a gifted kid?
I was a gifted and talented
I can
kid,
feel that.
yes.
Yeah, the talisman gave it away. Because honestly, I would struggle reading that today.
Yes. Yeah. I have like reread it like within the last couple years just to be like, I should take another look at this. And it took me a very long time. Not that it's just long. There's just a lot there. There's some, it could have been a lot shorter, in my humble opinion. King, take notes from me, of course.
So funny because I think that definitely likely reflects a lot about you, who you are, where you come from. And mine, for me, I think does as well. So if you're coming from a place of like one of the headier, more like, challenging Stephen King's, the first Stephen King book I ever read was definitely The Girl Who Loved
I
Tom
love that.
Gordon when I was in like 6th grade. So definitely one of his like maybe handful of kind of YA books. But even still, like incredible, beautiful, and quite scary even to this day.
Well, and a young protagonist, like that's such a great book to read like as a younger adult, because I feel like I wish I had read that when I was a little bit younger, because just being to relate to that and the idea of just being out there alone without your family. And like, like the Kevin McAllister, like I made my family disappear, and just like what could happen in that scenario, and then how quickly you regret it. Like that's such a good like entry point, I think, as a young adult.
It's perfect. And I won't say much more than this, but I'm listening to the audiobook for the first time now, and it's being read by Anne Hesh, which is really beautiful to me.
That is, and also kind of like very sad. I'm gonna listen to it too now.
Very sad.
All right.
You should, and she's so good. Anne Hesh, truly, I'm not just saying it, one of my favorites of all time for 2 reasons. Of course, I Know What You Did Last Summer, but also, have you seen Birth?
No, wait, with Nicole Kidman? Is that? No, I know what you're talking about, but I haven't seen it.
Okay. It's the most bizarro movie of all time. It may be my favorite movie of all time. And she just has a cuckoo banana pants supporting role in it that I couldn't recommend more. Also, brunette.
Oh, all right. Sold.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'll check it out.
Well, generally on this podcast, I would love to kiki for so much longer on this, but we have so much to do today. So I think that we should start. As I said so eloquently, we're going to be tackling the past, the present, and the future of the Dark Tower. But before we get there, I think we should maybe just do like a preliminary seminar on what this series is. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah, I think that's smart.
Okay, so The Dark Tower, a series of 8 novels, 1 novella, and I believe a children's book, all written by Stephen King. This sort of epic series that pulls from multiple genres like dark fantasy and western and horror, and it all concerns this character that is a gunslinger sort of on his odyssey or quest towards this dark tower. And this tower is literal, but it's also metaphorical, and it's this like gigantic gothic structure that holds the universe together, and we need to protect it, I guess. It is King's magnum opus work, and I think because of that, it connects so many different of his books and stories and characters in really like braided and interesting ways, and in ways that I'm always surprised by. It was inspired by a poem by Robert Browning. It was inspired by The Lord of the Rings and, The Legend of Arthur and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I believe Stephen King also references Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name character as like one of the big inspirations for Roland, aka the gunslinger, and I believe the protagonist generally of this series. Okay, I have a little game for us. Do you think you could list all the books?
Yes, and I'm going to try really hard not to turn around and look at my bookshelf behind me.
No, you can't do that. Hold on, I need to get them up in front of me, actually. So, like, I know if you're telling the truth. Okay, I'm ready.
Yes,
are you ready?
Okay. So, number 1 is the gunslinger. Number 2, drawing of the 3. 3 is the wastelands. 4 is wizard and glass. 5 is wolves of the Kala. Song of Susanna. 7, Dark Tower. And then there's Wind Through the Keyhole, which was like technically number 8, but I think was actually supposed to be, happen, after Wizard and Glass. And then the children's book, Charlie the Choo-Choo, right? So that's 9. I had to go in order.
Holy shit. You need to go to prison immediately for knowing all that so fast. Wait. For extra point, there is also a short story in the
Oh,
world. Can you list
Sisters
it?
of Alluria.
Isn't it so spooky with the vampires?
Yes.
I've read that. Wow, okay, so you win nothing, but you do win.
I win.
So I'm really...
Validation.
Do you know there's an app where it's like mostly just like random trivia? It's called Sporkle. Have you
No.
heard of this? Okay, it's an amazing app. I recommend it. But so it's one of those things where it's like type out all the states of America and you have like 8 minutes to
gross.
do it. So that's kind of fun. But they have a do all Stephen King books. And I like one summer kept playing it, and once I got
Oh
it
my
right.
gosh.
Once
Wait,
I
like
got it
list
right.
all of them?
All of them.
Whoa.
All of them.
Okay.
I could no
Yeah.
longer do it. I've tried it ever since, and I'll get like, I don't know, 80% or 90%.
That's wild.
There was a time. I might be neuro spicy.
You and me both.
Okay, here's my question for you. Obviously, we're big fans of Stephen King, but what are our personal relationships with The Dark Tower? For you, where do you land with this series? in the
Yeah,
King
so
world?
it's so weird to me. And it's like something I don't even understand about myself. So I have read the first 4, and
Okay.
like this is, I mean, we're all friends now. You guys all know that I started with a talisman, so this should be right up my alley. And in a lot of ways it is. But I think what happened is I fell off waiting for Wolves of the Calla to come out. And then I don't know. And then Song of Susanna came out. And for some reason, when I know that there's like a backlog and there's like more coming, I have a hard time. I'm like, I can't jump into this right now. And so that's where I stopped. And I haven't finished. And I maybe this is the motivation I need to finally just like cross the last ones off of my list, because I don't have a good reason other than the fact that like, I don't know, that was the year I was going to college and I just got sidetracked and like just never circled back around to it. So I'm only halfway through Roland's journey, even though everything's been spoiled and I know what happens, and that's fine, but I just have not gone back yet. So I don't know. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I have to say, thank God you're here, because while you may have not finished the entire series, you are way further ahead than I am. So luckily I have someone to lead me through the dark. Okay, my question before I tell you mine is, if you were to go back and finish the series, would you start over or would you pick up?
Knowing me, I would start over because I haven't read those first 4 since I was like middle school and high school. And it's just not going to hit the same way. I'm going to forget a million things. Like, I'm going to want to go in and just do the journey from start to finish all at once. That's probably why I haven't gone back. Cause I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of pages. I don't know about this.
Much. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I understand that. Yeah, I forced us to make this our first episode today, and truly, I couldn't be less familiar with The Dark Tower if it was possible.
That's
not true. I'm a little bit obsessed with it, but I have not read it.
But you've read so much of other, so much other Stephen King's work, so that's the thing. Like, it pops up, everywhere. Yeah. So it's like, even if you haven't read any of this, you're familiar because you have to be, because you've read so much other stuff, and they're all intertwined.
Well, you're very kind. But you are a liar, because I should go to jail for having never read it. I think part of the reason I've never read it, as you were saying, is a lot to undertake. And as much as I'm obsessed with Stephen King, I've actually never been the world's biggest reader. It's always been a little bit intimidating to me. And I love horror. Like, horror is kind of like what'll get me into reading when I do. And I've always interpreted these books to be a little horror adjacent, not quite as spooky as I'd want them to be, which is probably silly because it's so much more complicated than that, but it kind of kept me away. I've picked up The Gunslinger 1.5 trillion times, both physically and through audiobook, and I've never gotten more than, like, I don't know, a little bit in. So
that's fair. It's I can see that. Like, I feel like that book is not for everybody. And I've heard such mixed things, even from like my fellow Losers Club coach. Like, some of them love it. Some of them are like, I can't stand the Gunslinger. So I think that if it's hard to get through it, but you know enough about it, maybe this is blasphemy, but just just jump to Drawing of the Three, because I feel like Drawing of the Three, like, wow. I feel like that's where things really start to pick up for a lot of people, and like The Wasteland. So it's like, just, you know what happens, just move on.
Oh my God. So it's kind of like a Housewife franchise where, like, you can jump into the 3rd season because it's really when the action starts.
Yeah, you just gotta, like, just, all right, where does Sonia Morgan come in? All right, I'm on, like, I'm gonna start from here, and just like forget about those one season Housewives that nobody cares about.
Literally. Although I'm a little bit obsessed with the one season wonders, and I kind of want to like bring them all in for something.
Ooh,
I don't know what.
please do.
Even though they're so bad. No one cares about this, so I have to move on quickly. But my favorite is Carlton the Witch from Beverly Hills. Like, I want to know more. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry to everyone listening at home. So, as my sorry for you, I think it's time that we head into our first real chapter of, unproduced Dark Tower adaptations. And as I said so many times, we're going to start in the past. So, Rachel, do you want to lead us through, historically what we almost received in the Dark Tower adaptation world?
So phase 1, we're going to go way back to 2007. And actually, no, we're going to go back even a little bit further than that because Stephen King, people have been a fan of this series forever and have really seen the potential, I think, for a really long time. But, this is near and dear to King's heart. Like, he loves this. And so for a long time, he was turning down offers from studios and people to adapt it. And I read somewhere that he even Frank Darabont, who did Shawshank and The Green Mile, who King loves, wanted to do this, and King turned him down. However, at some point he decided, okay, maybe let's move on with this. Let's do this. And the person he said yes to was in 2007, and that was Mr. J.J. Abrams. And Damon Lindelof, who came to him. And at that time, it's interesting to think back because obviously now people know J.J. Abrams for so many different things. But at the time, I think he was probably best known for Lost and
Alias.
Alias. And Damon Lindelof for Lost. And so, I don't know, King loves TV. And I'm sure, he's a fan of those series, I'm sure. So for some reason, he said yes to them and optioned the Dark Tower for $19.
Wow. Wait, can you explain briefly what that means or means?
So 19 is an iconic number in just all of King's Dominion, but specifically the Dark Tower. It pops up all the time and actually has a pretty prominent, kind of scary role and a level of importance in the Dark Tower series. Basically, if you say or think the number 19 at one point, you're basically damned. You will die. It's
God.
crazy. And also just think about oh, I can't think about or say this number ever.
I'm never gonna stop thinking about it now.
But it pops up everywhere. He sneaks it in everywhere. It's such a dorky little Easter egg. He'll be numbers will add up to 19 or people's addresses will be 19.
Wow, Taylor Swift coded.
Yes, very Taylor Swift code. So that's why he optioned it to them for reported $19. And, but this was a lot to undertake, I think, and for anybody. And I think it was one of those things where probably both of them were amazing, let's move forward. And then really started to think about it and were oh shit, what are we doing? What have we done? So, in a July 2009 interview, Lindelof revealed, he said this. He says, the idea of taking on something that massive again after having done 6 seasons of Lost is intimidating and slightly frightening, to say the least. Agreed, and very understandable. And so that was kind of how he was feeling about it. And then producers were kind of having their own reservations because it's such a big property. And so it just kind of stalled. I think everybody just sort of kind of lost their enthusiasm for it and just really were I don't know how this is going to work. And let's see, we've got another quote from Lindelof here. And this one is from USA Today from 2009. And he says, "You'll be hard-pressed to find a huger fan of the Dark Tower than me, but that's probably the reason that I shouldn't be the one to adapt it. After working 6 years on Lost, the last thing I want to do is spend the next 7 years adapting one of my favorite books of all time. I'm such a massive Stephen King fan that I'm terrified of screwing it up. I'd do anything to see those movies written by someone else. My guess is they will get made because they're so incredible, but not by me."
Well,
and I get it. I really do understand. And it's just, especially when you're so close to it. And if he actually is being honest about how he feels, it could just be so intimidating. If I'm not going to do it right, I don't want to do it at all. And that's kind of the vibes that I get here from this. And so finally in November of 2009, Abrams had finally stated that he would not be adapting this series. During an interview for MTV, he said, "The Dark Tower thing is tricky. The truth is that Damon and I are not looking at that right now." So I think they both just kind of, like Homer Simpson in the bush, just kind of casually.
Yeah. Yeah. Whoa. I mean, I respect it, as we've seen eventually, with the film they did
Mhm.
make. I think these guys sort of realized that, it couldn't be done on the scale that it was maybe being asked to be done. And I think they maybe made the right move. My question for you is, do you think that they could have been the right dudes for the
I
gig?
think they could have if they were given, the right budget and the right, I don't know, setting. Like, I can't
Mhm.
actually remember if they were trying to do like a film or specifically a series. Oh, yeah. Was it like, or a series?
I
But
think it was a TV
yeah,
series.
I think it was just, the stars had to align. And I, I think Abrams is really like oddly good at like starting projects, starting franchises, not necessarily good at like following through or like finishing them, but and
Wow.
shots fired,
Well,
Abrams.
well, yeah. No, but honestly, it's true. Um, and he has such a strange report card, because there are such wins and such losses. I mean, I'm not a Star Wars girly, but I liked Force
Hmm.
Awakens not like enough, and I was never into Lost. But every once in a while he'll do something interesting. I don't know if it's these two, but some people from Lost are doing that new show From.
Oh, I
Have you seen
haven't, but
that?
I've heard it's
Oh,
like good and scary.
oh, it's fucked. It's like, and Stephen King's obsessed
Yeah.
with it too, but that's not always saying everything. But anyway, I don't know. It's
It
hard
is
to
hard
know
to know.
if
And
they
like,
were
I mean,
doing that.
Lindelof has obviously like he's even involved in the Alien franchise with Prometheus and that kind of stuff. So like I do feel like they probably could have done something cool with it at the very least. I also wonder if there got any pushback from King. Because I did find a quote somewhere where he was basically saying that, Lindelof was unable to take creative license with
Whoa.
King's, like the storyline. So I do wonder if there was some sort of pushback, and I couldn't find anything. This is all just speculation, but if there was some pushback from King being like, "No, this is what I want to happen," and
You're like,
Lindelof being like, "Yeah, but what if we went this way?" And just some sort of like maybe casual disagreement, and they just
mhm.
realized like, "Nope, I don't want to do this.
You're not
Yeah, I don't
fighting
want
with
to fight with you.
King.
I
Yeah.
love this. Let's just call it a draw and walk away."
Yeah. Iconic filmmaker Stephen King.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Um, Interesting. I remember this all going down because I'm old. But I am wondering, because I know right after these guys, their option kind of fell through, that a new head sort of took
Yeah.
over, and I'm wondering who
Yeah,
that
so
was.
let's move into phase two, I guess, of this
Yeah,
terrible
yeah,
downward spiral. And this
yeah.
time, who walks in but Mr. Ron Howard? So, another gigantic name, and especially at this time, probably more respected than even Abrams and Lindelof. So, in 2010, Universal Pictures, they were really kind of like, okay, that fell through. We want on this train. And they wanted to do a trilogy of films. And then in between those films, they wanted to have a couple seasons of television to sort of bridge the gap and, keep things moving. So that was their plan. And so Ron Howard was deeply involved in this and the option and really wanted to do it. He was set to direct and produce it. Akiva Goldsman was going to write the script, and then Brian Grazer was also going to produce, and Stephen King would be a producer as well. And so that was kind of the next big like movement on this. And then in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, King said, "I always thought it would take more than a single movie, but I didn't see this solution coming, i.e., several movies and a
Mm.
TV series. It was Ron Howard and Akiva Goldsman's idea. Once it was raised, I thought at once it was the solution." So,
Okay,
yeah, so
bud.
I love that.
Hmm.
So yeah, they were moving. They were talking about casting. Javier Bardem was ultimately set to be cast as the role of Roland. I also read somewhere that like Viggo Mortensen was up there, which I was like, yeah, okay, I can see that for sure. Universal kind of wavered with the budget. I think it was initially set higher and then they kind of backed off, I think, when they realized like everything that it was going to need. So they committed to a lower budget for the project. And then Goldsman became, he started rewriting the script to make that work. Be like, okay, great.
Yeah.
How do we do that? Well, I guess we're going to have to change some things. So he did that. And then in 2011, Universal decided finally they just scrapped the whole thing because I think they were running the numbers and they just scrapped the whole thing due to budgetary concerns.
Yikes.
Which, yeah, duh. Like, it's so stupid to me. Like, what did you expect?
So wait, with Abrams, was it Universal at that point?
I think no, I don't think it was. I can't remember who he was, but I thought it switched hands.
It seemed
Yeah.
to. Okay, so now we're going from Universal. You're saying Universal dropped it.
Yes.
Who
So
picked it up?
then, Howard wasn't done with it though. Like Howard was still like all in on this. So he
Cute.
basically picked up his toys and left, but was like, I'm not done with this. I'm just going to go somewhere else. And so he shopped it around and then he took it to HBO and HBO was like, sure, yes, we'll do like the television part of it, which especially at this time, like Game of Thrones, which is like
Cool.
exactly what this story needs, like that kind of
Needed,
treatment. And HBO was on board to handle the television part of that. And then in March of 2012, Warner Brothers jumped in and expressed interest in taking on that side of the project. So the films, it seemed like stars are aligning, seemed, like everything was coming together. This time, Russell Crowe was talked about as being Roland, and so his name was being tossed around. But then, before too long, like not even that long after, like you actually have the dates here, and I'm so glad you do because, yeah, so it was March 2012 when Warner Brothers was like, yeah, let's do it. We would love this. And then in August of 2012, Warner Brothers was like, oh, yeah, about that, and passed.
Whoa. So that's two studios, a number of creative teams, all sort of trying and wimping out at this point. Now, before we sort of move into the next phase, I'm wondering like what you think like of this team. Like what do we think about casting either Javier Bardem or Viggo Mortensen?
I mean, I can see both of them, and I kind of like it. Like, I think Javier would have brought a different, like a different attitude, a different flavor to this character, but still would have worked really well. Like, I think that he's able. The thing about Roland is like, especially for a really long time, you don't know is he a good guy, is he a bad guy? Like he really is that kind of stoic Clint Eastwood sort of cowboy character where he's not necessarily our hero, but we don't hate him, and kind of in between. Sort of an anti-hero kind of character, and I think that all of these men could have like portrayed that really well, and I think they have the look for it too. Like I mean Viggo is so handsome.
Damn.
But he's like the kind of person that looks like really good, like scruffy.
Yeah, and like a little scary.
Exactly. So that's the thing. Like I think all of these men so far like can look a little menacing, but they can also like be a little endearing in moments. And so I think honestly, I think all of these men would do like fine as Roland.
Yeah. Actually, one of the very few things that has not really gone wrong in this development world was casting. Like even what we eventually got, the casting was the best part of what we saw in 2017. Right. But this is also when Akiva Goldsman came on board, which I don't know if I'd be too salty or not, but I just have this instinct that it was like the first nail in the coffin creatively, but he's not going to listen. Why am I being all nervous?
You can get an angry email from him. Dear Josh, why do you hate me?
As you probably know, it can happen. So
it's true.
Yeah, I don't know about him. He's ruined a couple of my faves over the years. Ron Howard, I don't when I think of Ron Howard, I think of like Arrested Development, so I don't really have a huge opinion there.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting, like thinking about Ron Howard. When I think of Ron Howard, I do think about things that are like a little bit more polished, a little bit more like cinematic, but cinematic in kind of like a traditional, movie sheen kind of way. And I do feel like the Dark Tower does need like a little bit of grit, a little bit of, and I just don't get like gritty from Ron
I
Howard.
like couldn't even tell you a Ron Howard movie I had to
Oh, Apollo
Google.
13, Angels and Demons. Like I feel like he would cast like Tom Hanks as like Roland.
Do it. Oh, he did A Beautiful Mind?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Nothing I'm interested in.
Like
But work.
I do think he has a good sense of humor, but I think his stories are a little like lean a little bit more towards like the Spielberg side of things. It's like, no, I need a little bit of grit. I need a little bit like for this story. I think it
Yeah.
just I don't know. I don't know how that would have panned out in the end.
Well,
Exactly.
it didn't really. So maybe I can take us into what I call the present of the Dark Tower. It's not exactly true. It's still the past to some degree, but it is what we have. So yeah, so you were leading us off around 2012. If you want to fast forward a little bit to April of 2015, this is when Sony and another studio, MRC, Media Rights Capital, decided to announce that they were fast tracking a Dark Tower film, this time with a totally reworked script, again by Goldsman and Jeff Pinkner. King seemed excited, although I have to be honest with you, King has seemed excited every step of the way. And around this time, he said, literally, I'm excited that the Dark Tower is going to appear on screen. Although this is when we realized that Ron Howard had stepped out as director, but was remaining as a producer. And spoiler alert, the film we got, I do believe he was still there in a producing capacity. Same year, we got an announcement of who was directing the project. Sony hired, or was looking to hire, Nicolas Arcel to direct. And he came on board officially in 2015. And we had Anders Thomas Jensen again rewriting the script. Yikes. But they were determined around this time. So they had everything together, and Sony Pictures set a 2017 release date, which eventually they did or were able to commit to. 2015 is when we got some casting announced, and this is when I remember getting kind of excited about the project. So we got Matthew McConaughey was offered the role of Randall Flagg, aka the Man in Black. We haven't really talked about other characters other than Roland yet, but he is the antagonist of this series, and he's also in a way the antagonist of the King universe. You'll probably remember him as sort of the big bad from other King stories like The Stand and Desperation. No, not Desperation. He's in a lot of stuff. What else other than The Stand?
Oh well, I mean, he's implied to be like in Children of the Corn. Like it's supposed to be Roland Flagg.
Yeah.
Like he's the man, like he who walks behind the rose. Like it.
That's him.
Well,
Cute.
supposedly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so he's everywhere, and I love that for him. And he's so sassy, and I'm gonna say it, giving gay. Yeah. So Randall Flagg going to McConaughey, I don't know, kind of just seemed like it made sense. So in 2016, it was announced that they had found their Roland and that Idris Elba was going to be playing that character after they had gone through so many other choices. And to this day, it is a great pick, in my opinion. How do you feel about this role?
I mean, I do think that like the casting is really good. Like I love Idris Elba in this, and like McConaughey on paper, I actually do really like. I am a little confused with what we actually got from him as Randall Flagg, but I can see why the appeal there. And I do think like he probably could have done it if maybe like the script was a little different and the story was a little different. I have no complaints about the casting here at all.
The wig was bad.
Yeah, also that.
The wig was not good. The wig was a roof stoof. Yeah, so they shot this film in South Africa, and I believe we're intending always to have this be the first of a number of different films. And, spoiler alert, that did not happen. We also got the casting of Tom Taylor as Jake Chambers. Do you want to let us know a little bit about who Jake is?
So Jake is he ends up being like part of Roland's like quartet, and he's this kid from Earth who comes into Midworld and helps navigate back and forth with Roland. Ultimately his fate, let's just say, is quite different in the books than it is with what we get here. And he's kind of like an old soul too, a little bit. Like, he's not a super annoying kid. Like, he does go through some shit in the book. And I think we get a little bit of that too in the film. So outside of what actually happens with Jake in the movie, I do think that it's a decent representation of Jake that we see in the series as well.
He was definitely giving it his all, for sure. Something that really struck me, this is the first time that I'd actually ever seen the Dark Tower film. I kind of avoided it as a fan just because I wasn't loving what I was hearing from other fans and audience members. And so I never watched it, and I finally did. And it really struck me in this film, like, how often Stephen King loves to torture psychic children. It's so much. He hurts them so much. And I'm just like, I'm not saying I'm against it, but it's so strange. It's so interesting.
It is. Yeah, I don't know what he's working through with that.
And it reminds me of Martyrs too. Like, I was like, oh, this is giving like crappy Martyrs.
Oh, that's so funny. I've never thought about that, but I can see where you're coming from.
Like, that's kind of what that's about. I've actually never seen Martyrs because I can't. I'm too scared. But like, that's kind of like what it was about. And I read The Institute a couple years ago, which was another like torturing kids that are psychic, and Carrie is torturing kids that are psychic, and I don't know, it's just like his favorite thing to do, and I'm kind of wondering what it means. Like, what's the analogy?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something that's like really sad about it, and the fact that like it's probably true though. Like, if these kids were found to be telepathic or but I think it can also be really empowering in a lot of ways, like especially with something like Carrie, even though it ends badly. Just the fact that like somebody kind of coming into their own and having these powers and being able to just like literally burn everything to the ground. Like, I think that we see those characters, and even in like Firestarter, like those moments can be really empowering in a lot of ways, because it's just able to like fight back and, just for a second, live through their, what do they say? Like, live vicariously through some of these characters.
Carrie was maybe one of the original good for hers, and I like that.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, she does kill an entire town and a lot of innocent people, but there's some moments that are very good for her, for sure.
I don't know. Innocent is such a here. Yeah, so this movie came out, unfortunately, and I think I mentioned it was supposed to be, at least tepidly, the beginning of a multimedia franchise, but it was not considered to be a success commercially. I think it made around $110 million against a $66 million budget, but I don't think that includes marketing or so much money that they probably dumped into developing it over 20 years. So there's just no way this movie was profitable for them. And worse, it was such a critical failure. Critics and fans, basically everyone but Stephen King, did not really seem to enjoy it. And I kind of want to ask you, why do you think that is?
Okay, well, number one, I feel like this is the part of King, like, he starts to veer and just kind of starts to suddenly like everything. It's hard to trust anything he says when it comes to like some of his movies sometimes. So I don't know if he actually really does like it. But I think that it's confusing. Like, it's insane. You watch this movie, and I try to imagine if I knew zero about the Dark Tower going into this. Here's the thing. I know a decent amount about the Dark Tower, and yet I watch this film and am so confused. And so it's like it fails for fans because ultimately it's so disappointing. But then if you don't know anything, it's like, what the fuck is happening? What is going on here? And so it doesn't work for it's like, who is this film for? It's trying to do too much. Also, the fact that it's trying to like start a franchise, but yet like basically muddying all the books together. It's like, what's the next film? Like, what are you gonna do? It's
It's
so strange.
so weird. It felt to me like a sequel to like Fantastic Beasts or something. Like it just didn't make any sense at all. It was giving post Harry Potter to
Yeah.
me a little
Yeah.
bit.
And I think it just there was too many cooks in the kitchen, and especially like cooks who don't know how to cook, like too many producers who don't know this franchise who are trying to like make sense of it. And I'm sorry, but the Dark Tower is not something that you can just like easily like make sense of. Like it's so dense and it's such a rich
No,
world.
no, no, no,
And
no.
it just feels like they were just really desperately trying to assemble pieces into something. And this is what we got. And it's just sad.
It's not good. No, it's very disappointing, and I'm not saying that they didn't give it their all, but like clearly at the end of the day, like it just didn't work out. I think you need like a mad scientist behind the wheel. You need to like put some creative control into somebody's hands, and yeah, you're taking a risk. And like this just struck me as people desperately trying not to take a risk. And you can't, not with something like
Right.
this. Just
Yeah,
don't do
exactly.
it. I think the first dudes were right. They were like, "No, you
Yes.
can't. Like, it's just not
Yeah.
gonna happen." Um, any other thoughts about the Dark Tower film before we go into the
It's
future?
a kind of a nightmare, but I do encourage anybody that is like a fan of it or like this series just to watch it, just to like, I don't know. It's kind of like when you drive past like a train wreck or something, you can't help but look. So I just encourage because it's just interesting to see like, oh, okay, this is what you did. All right, that's interesting.
For the first 20 minutes, I was like, "Okay, like maybe this isn't that bad." And I was like almost like into it. And then there's like a turning point where it just so spirals into terrible
Mm-hmm.
nonsense. It was just so
Yeah.
bad. Although it was kind of funny when he killed his mom and like wrote "ha ha ha" on the wall in her ashes.
Yes.
I was like, what a
Yeah.
fiend, what a nasty
Yeah.
guy.
So
Um, that
it's
was funny.
funny because yeah, you would think that after that, this project would sort of be dead. But
Yeah.
no, as King himself has told us, like, sometimes
Uh,
things come back, including
the wheel of
Dark
Ka
Tower.
keeps going.
However, just like Stephen King also says, sometimes dead is better, but we'll see.
Wow, that was good. You got that
Um,
good.
so the next thing, I guess, that they decided to do, the next group company to jump in the fray was Amazon. And so they in 2018 bought the rights for the Dark Tower because they wanted to jump into the series game. And this is such an interesting part of this story to me because it actually was like pretty like yeah, it was real. It was happening. We got a pilot.
Yeah, for sure.
And so for this, Glenn Mazzara, who a lot of people know from The Walking Dead, or maybe, I don't know if they know, but he was a showrunner on The Walking Dead. And so that was kind of the world that he was coming from. And he had all these plans for this. He had plans for each season. He had a cast in mind. And he was moving forward with this. And Amazon bit and got involved with it. And so he was going to, for as far as cast was involved, Sam Strike and oh my gosh, how do you say this person's name? Jasper
I would say Paconen.
Jasper Paconen.
Is wrong. I
Yeah.
like how it sounds.
So
Okay.
they were being cast as Roland and the Man in Black, Mr. Roland Roland Flag, Randall Flag. And
Yeah.
so who else was involved? Michael Rooker, Jerome Flynn, Joanna
Ah.
Ribeiro. They were all going to be part of this cast. Everything was moving forward, and they even shot a pilot.
Whoa.
And I know people who have seen this pilot. I have not.
No way.
Yes,
Really?
I have not seen it. I have not seen it.
How did they
I
see
don't.
it?
I don't know.
Okay, it's
But
review.
I know that it
Okay.
exists, and people saw it, and people who love this franchise and love King, and they were very excited about it. Like they said, it looks great. It was amazing. You know, it looks amazing. The vibe is really good, and so it's really a bummer that ultimately what happens is it gets dropped. I think that Amazon really kind of got stuck in a position where it was like, what are we going to invest in? Because this is an investment. And I think just kind of the Dark Tower was a little bit, I mean, you look at the history, number one, it hasn't really ended up very well. And then number two, it's a little bit niche. And they knew that, okay, this is going to take a lot of money. This was going to be difficult to adapt. And like, yeah, Glenn, like we like what you're doing. However, we're just a little bit nervous. And so, you know, ultimately they decided to throw their money into Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings because obviously Lord of the Rings is a proven franchise, a proven series, proven money that people love, and they could pull on that nostalgia thing, whereas like, you know, Dark Tower doesn't really have that. So I get it, but also like super disappointing.
I didn't know it was supposedly good. That's really sad.
I think that people who saw it were at least like really interested in seeing more and like, okay, there's a vision here. And I think that's really what's been lacking for these things that we've seen anyways, ultimately, is like a really strong vision. And, you know, Glenn Mazzara does know television so well. I mean, The Walking Dead, I mean, it's still going. It really is it is an undead series. Like it refuses to die. So.
Oh, yeah. No, that's so true. And there was no celebrities involved, which I kind of like. They were like just trying to make it the best they could.
I think they were really trying to do the best they could and like get some money behind it and do it justice. But I think ultimately a lot of time producers, especially at major studios and places like Amazon, sometimes they're nervous Nellies. They want to see a return. They don't want to lose money. And I think that ultimately they were a little scared that this was not going to work out.
This is, it's a risk. And they had such a boner for making Lord of the Rings.
I know. I haven't watched it. I have actually heard decent things, but
I haven't watched it either. And I never will.
I probably won't either.
But that's
because we're protesting, because we're bitter.
No, because we're cool kids. Okay, we have better things to do. No, I'm sure it's beautiful and I'm sure it's amazing.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't know. It's just really sad to see that die that way. Because I don't know. It's that this is the big what if, I think. And I think it's because it actually we did actually get a pilot and it's out there. So if anybody else has seen it, like please let us know. You know, you don't have to tell us how you saw it. You don't have to like reveal your secrets, but just let us know, like, was it good? Did you like it?
Yeah, you used your shine and now tell us about it. I'm fucking fascinated. And it was also right off the heels of this disappointing film. So it was almost like we were gonna have this like chance to erase this mistake and do it right. It was like a miracle, and then it got
just the rug got pulled out from under us. Just very sad.
But not forever. You know? So that was, you know, where we left off IRL, but the future may hold something new for us. Hard to say for certain, but there has been some exciting hints and sort of reports over the last couple of years that are kind of worth noting about what could be happening for the future of the Dark Tower. In 2022, it was announced that Mike Flanagan, iconic horror hero Mike Flanagan from, you know, the man that brought us the Haunting of Hill House series and Doctor Sleep the film and the Haunting of Bly Manor and oh my god, the fucking fall of the House of Usher. Him and his Intrepid Pictures had optioned the rights to make the Dark Tower and that they were developing it as a series. Now, this doesn't mean that there was any kind of green light happening, but that he was actively sort of taking the reins on his own and trying to make it happen. This is around the time that Flanagan signed this big overall deal with Prime Video, leaving this really long and fruitful partnership with Netflix. He had done so much with Netflix. Like, I only named a couple of them. There was also his Gerald's Game adaptation, another King work. He did The Midnight Club. He did a lot. I don't know if Hush was directly with Netflix, but I think
It's
they
on,
like kind
yeah,
of
it was
took it
on, it's on
over
Netflix, but yeah.
on it. So like he had done a lot for them. I'm not exactly certain, how that relationship fared in the end, if it's amicable or not. But he did leave around this time and signed with Prime Video. And that doesn't mean necessarily that Prime were going to greenlight his adaptation, but he spoke with Deadline in 2022, and here's part of what he had to say. Predating our deal with Amazon, we acquired the rights to The Dark Tower, which, if you know anything about me, it's been my holy grail of a project for most of my life. We actually have those rights carved out of our Amazon deal, which doesn't mean that they can't or won't get behind it at some point. You just don't know. But that's something we've been developing ourselves, and we're really passionate about finally getting it up on its feet at some point. He followed that by saying, I wrote a pilot. We view it as a series that's going to last at least 5 seasons. And having lived with this project for as long as I have an enormous amount of it worked out in my brain. But I have a pilot script that I'm thrilled with, and a very detailed outline for the first season and a broader outline for subsequent seasons. I think eventually, if we're going to get going, there are some other writers I want to fold into the process with whom I've worked with before. I think they would be really fabulous for a small, intimate writer's room where we can continue to break it in. And the last part of the quote that I think is worth sharing is, I'll tell you, more than half my life, I've closed my eyes and I've been able to watch a lot of this play out. I've dreamt about this, the first shot, which comes right off the incredible sentence of the first book, The Gunslinger. I've had that image just rattling around in my head since I was in undergrad. It's going to have to get out there eventually. I really need to get it out of my head. The pilot is one of my favorite things I've ever worked on. It's been a surreal thing to work on, so we've been floored, and I'm grateful that Stephen King trusts us with such an undertaking, something so precious to him, and we hope that we find the right partners to make it. I love him so much, Rachel. I don't know how you necessarily feel about Mike Flanagan. We've never talked about it, but he's my baby girl. He is my sweetie, and I would kill for him, honestly. So, just hearing him talk, like, did you hear him kind of like I was a conduit for him.
I
Did you
did.
hear
I
that?
felt it. I was
Like,
tearing up a
so
little bit.
through
But
me.
the thing is, like, I believe him, and I
Oh,
love
fuck
following
yeah.
Flanagan. I love like listening because I feel like he's always very honest. Sometimes that's gotten him in trouble almost. We've seen, even recent days, he's
Recently,
kind of
yeah. Yeah.
backpedaled was talking about Netflix,
Yeah.
which is a little disappointing.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're right. You're right. But
Yes.
he's always talked about how much he loves Stephen King, and he has proven that he can do it. Gerald's Game was notoriously one of those projects that everybody's like, that's unfilmable. You can't do this. Like, there's no way to make this work. It doesn't work on screen. And Flanagan's like, hold my pizza. Hold my
Hold
pizza.
my...
If you follow him on Instagram, it's just like a bunch of pizza. And so I believe him, and I think that he is very good about thinking things out. Just looking at his like other past projects, there's things like Midnight Mass is something that I think that he talked about and like planned out for a very long time. And so I have faith in him. I also like, a lot of people give him shit for like his monologues and like those like heavy emotional moments, but there's a
Fuck
lot of
them.
things in this series that I think that would actually lend itself and make sense. Like the Gunslinger is a lot of just like walking and talking across the desert and stuff, so it wouldn't be something that people be like, oh, there goes Flanagan again. It's like, no, that's just part of the story.
That's yeah. I think it would be a real good fit. I am not necessarily a big fan of Doctor Sleep. I think maybe it's more the book that maybe I have problems with. And whenever I talk about how I didn't love the film, people always ask, well, did you watch the 30 million hour
yeah.
extended cut? And I always have to say no. So maybe one day I will, and it'll change my mind. But I don't think that's on Flanagan.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways it's like actually quite a terrifying adaptation.
Yeah.
So
there's nothing of his that I haven't liked. Let's just say that. Like there's stuff that I've been more a fan of than others, but it's not like I've ever seen something and been like, oh, woof, you know, like what? That sucks.
I put off watching Midnight Mass for so long just because anything like vaguely religious bores me. And then I finally watched it. My whole world changed. I'm religious now, and so that's
Church
fun.
of Flanagan. That's you.
Yeah, when you said following Flanagan, I was like, oh, new podcast. I see. Following Flanagan. Fanigans. I can make that up. So something that I find kind of interesting, this is super non-official, is that there has been some casting rumors circulating on the internet, about who could potentially be in a Flanagan Dark Tower series. Now, something I find interesting is like Mike Flanagan famously has like a Rolodex of Flanagan brunettes that he works with constantly. And I do like them.
I do too, but I'm sorry. Like I love
apologist.
Kate Siegel. Beautiful. She's amazing. But I don't want to see her in this series.
Wow. Would you prefer Sherry Moon Zombie?
No, I wouldn't. But I also would not prefer.
I mean, she could play like the garbage man or something. I don't care. Who am I thinking of from the stand?
Yes, I just like I like that he has a cast, but I think for something like this, it would benefit him to bring in some other people. Like, I'm sorry.
She's gonna be in it for sure. There's no doubt in my mind, though. So maybe not Susanna, but someone.
Oh, I'm sure she'll pop up. I would prefer. I would prefer if she didn't. Just this one time.
Hopefully the hair is better than what they did to her on House of Usher.
That's true. Yeah.
That wasn't fair to her. Okay, so some of the casting rumors that have been swirling around, and of course we're going to see some of his repertoire show up, but I believe Henry Thomas, the love of my life, #1 crush, did express interest in, being in the Dark Tower at some point online. So just the fact that Henry Thomas is like actively interested in being in it would, in my opinion, sort of up his odds significantly if he just called up Daddy Flan and was like, put me in it. He's so hot to me. I remember when I really fell in love with Henry Thomas. Have you ever seen Psycho 4?
No.
Beginning? He plays a young, like, teen Norman Bates in that. And like, holy moly, what a babe. And then he's also a babe in many Flanagan projects, IMO. So okay. And the final piece of interesting casting rumor would suggest that Rahul Kohli would make an excellent Roland, which he definitely would be. And a fan took to Twitter to suggest that, since Kohli lost out on a pretty major role in Marvel's Fantastic Four, that maybe, this could be a gateway to him playing Roland. And I believe Mike Flanagan engaged with this tweet in some way, either retweeting it or liking it or something suspicious. So, what do you think of these?
Look, I love Rahul Kohli. I think he's great in so many things. I would have to see him in the getup, I think. And here's the thing, I know he's not that old, but I wonder if he's too old for this role. I almost feel like Roland should be a little bit younger.
And by the time it's already filming, it's going to be another 10 years now, so.
I don't picture, when I picture Roland, I don't necessarily, I can't remember if they actually I talk about how old, but I feel like he's just kind of a timeless character, but I don't necessarily picture him mid 40s.
Yeah, I feel
and
you on
so
that.
I think that would be my thing is I would almost like to see somebody a little younger maybe. But I don't know. I could be persuaded, I guess. If I could see him in the getup and be like, "Oh, yes, please."
I mean, he is a handsome fella. Can I tell you a little bit of tea? He was one of my less polite interviews that I've ever
I hear.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
sad. That's sad to
What?
hear.
What?
I hate hearing
Oh,
that.
that's
Like,
bad
that's
here, yeah.
sad to hear because no.
I'm not saying he was necessarily like rude or mean, but you know this from interviewing
Yes.
people for horror is that often they'll be like, "Yeah, horror's stupid. I don't like horror," and that was like him. He was like, "I think horror's dumb," and I was like, "Don't say that to me." And also, the interviewers introduced me as Bloody Disgusting and not Dread Central, and I was really like, "Okay." So that was a bad day at Tribeca 2021. I thought that was funnier in my mind. It came out sad. Okay, to end this section, I'm going to say that as this all sounds like good news, something that maybe is a bit of a dark cloud on top of all this is a couple weeks back, or even less, it was announced officially that Flanagan was going to be creating an Exorcist reboot for Blumhouse. Could this be not an amazing sign for the Dark Tower? I don't know. So I guess my question for you is, Flanagan for the Dark Tower, how do we feel?
I mean, I would like to see it. I have faith in him that he could do something really interesting with it. And I think that he knows what he wants. And I also I get the impression that he wouldn't just settle. You know what I mean? Like, he's not necessarily motivated by like, oh, I want to do this because Stephen King is hot in the franchise and like, I want to cash in on this. I think that he, similarly to Abrams and Lindelof, would possibly back out if it wasn't feeling right. I think he bought the rights because it's so important to him. And so I do think that if he does it, he's going to do it justice, at least in his own mind. And so I can live with that. The Exorcist thing is very interesting. I have more complicated feelings, I think, on that. It does align, I think, in a lot of ways with sort of kind of classic Flanagan things. You've got, the faith, and you've got the horror. It's like all the elements are there.
Yeah, that's all true.
But I don't know what he's doing. However, like, just because he owns the rights for the Dark Tower, I mean, I think he's even said, he's like, I haven't sold this to anybody. He has a plan, he has a script, he has a pilot, he has the ideas and all the materials, but it doesn't sound like anybody's bit on that. And I don't think he's going to fund this himself. So I don't know. It could just time out at some point, and then he's just going to be like, all right, well, that didn't happen. And then who knows? And then somebody else will buy it. Yeah.
Another footnote in the history of the Dark Tower. Frick and frack. Yeah, I am not an Exorcist guy to the degree of I didn't even see the
Don't
last
bother.
one.
It's garbage. Sorry. And I never, like, I am very, like, generous, I feel like, with films. But even this one,
Yeah, you like
I like to like, and I don't like to talk shit about things because, you know what, all movies are magic. Like, I do think that takes a lot of people. But that movie was like, wow, this is a hot mess.
That's too bad. I remember hearing, not a rumor, maybe I even like totally misinterpreted, that at the ending there was like hints of it like not being demons and it was like an alien, and I thought, wow, that's cool. But then I was told
I don't remember an alien.
Yeah, I've been told that I made that up. Maybe I dreamt it. Would that be cool? Where it's like you thought she was possessed by the devil, and it was just an alien. That'd be wild. And then she gets like sucked up, and they're like,
at least it would be something new.
Yeah, I was like, well, no wonder people were mad. Okay, so conclusion territory. Since you and I are Hollywood heavyweights, I get to ask, because what do you think's going to happen with the Dark Tower, ultimately?
It's a great question. I do think that it will get made at some point. I think that over time, Stephen King, in a lot of ways, has only, like, I mean, he's always been a powerhouse name, right? Like, he is IP. Like, Stephen King is his own massive appeal. And I do think it will get made. I just don't know when, because it's not easy. It's so massive, and I think that all the studios rightfully know how much it's going to take to invest that much money, that much time. So really, honestly, the stars are all going to have to align, but, cause a wheel. Destiny is out there, so eventually, like, all things serve the beam, and eventually that light's going to shine on this property, and it will happen because there's so many other things of King's that have been made and made well. And I think eventually this is just going to have to get the same treatment. So I don't know when. I really don't. But just fingers crossed that when it does it justice.
Well, that's the question. That's my last question, really, which is it possible? Like, do you, like, could it be
I think
done?
so. I mean, look at Game of Thrones. They didn't even have the end of those. Like, those books weren't even written, and like they pulled that. I mean, well, okay. I mean, I'm not going to get into like did they stick the landing or not, but like it was very successful for
But
a
still.
very long time. And no matter how you feel about how it ended, and like it looks great, it looks amazing. It was very complex. Like there are series like this, there are movie franchises like this. I also think that everything happens in trends. I think that it's a missed opportunity to not do this because like westerns have been dead for a very long time. And I don't know, I would like to see some westerns come back in some way, and I think this might be a good way to kind of bridge that because it's not just like all western story. It's got the fantasy, it's got some horror, it's got some like it's got all these other elements that I think could be really cool. I think it would just need to be like the right time and the right place. But I think, and I do think TV, honestly, would be the best way to go. I don't think movies is the way to
Sure.
go with this. I think TV makes the most
No,
sense.
no. Yeah, the movie was like, I made my Fantastic Beasts analogy, but it was also kind of felt like the Sorcerer's Stone of the Dark
Mm.
Tower. Like, it felt like a kiddie, like, first
Totally.
chapter.
Yeah, and like I would love to see like if anybody's seen the Lisi story adaptation. That
Mm-hmm.
is beautiful. And but same thing, it took like a great visionary director to like really have like a vision for what they wanted to do with that. And
Was that J.J.
no,
Abrams?
it was oh my gosh, what's his name? I'm gonna find it.
Because King wrote it, I
He
thought.
did write it, and that's but the thing is like that's another series that's really close to his heart and was so he was directly involved
Oh,
with it.
yeah.
Oh, Pablo Larraín did Lisi's story.
Oh,
And like it's
wow.
great. It's a bummer. Like don't get me wrong. Like it's not a
Yeah,
feel-good
yeah.
story, but it's beautiful. It's well executed, a great cast for the most part. Clive Owen I have some about but here and there,
Oh,
but
okay.
still. And so I think it's possible. You just have to have kind of the right elements and the right, I don't know, people backing it who are willing to toss some money at it and do it right.
I'll throw them $1, I guess. Okay, Rachel, where can you be found online if you so wish to be found?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at the Vinyl Girl, GRRRL, or Twitter at Vinyl Girl, or yeah, you can catch me on any myriad of podcasts. So yeah.
I love it. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this first episode of Stephen King Unseen. I hear through the grapevine you'll be back next week for, I'm going to say, a very different kind of Stephen King
Yes,
story.
I'm excited. I'm excited to go on this journey
Me
with you.
too.
Thank you for bringing me into your quartet. And, I just, want to say to all the listeners, long days and pleasant nights. And thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sai, for having me.
Love it. Thank you so much for listening to Development Hell. If you enjoy this podcast, then please do us a major favor of leaving us 5 stars and writing a positive review. It really makes all the difference in the world. We'll see you next week with a brand new episode of Development Hell.
Thank you for listening to the Dread Podcast Network.